Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill. Before we jump into this conversation today, just wanted to thank quickly our main sponsor of the episode, Foundation Software, for making this episode possible. All right, let's jump into the show. Well, welcome back, Sam. We had such a great time last week that we decided to have you back on and talk a little bit more. I hope you're ready for being another glutton for punishment.
Yeah, my pleasure, Mike. I had a good time last time, and I'm sure we'll have fun today as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, let's jump right in. So you kind of alluded to this a little bit and mentioned something about the labor shortages in construction last week, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that from your point of view and see what you're seeing out there and what you're hearing in the industry.
Yeah, let's start with a couple of stats. It would probably paint the picture a little bit. A recent survey from AGC, American General Contractor of America, they interviewed about 1,500 contractors across the nation, and these are some of the percentages that went like 85% of them says they have open positions for skilled labor. 88% of them said they're having a hard time filling the positions. 68% of those having a hard time filling the position says the reason is because they can't find qualified labor.
Wow, that's a big deal. So what are some of the challenges that you see? Obviously, the schedule is impacted immediately. If you don't have enough hands doing the work, it's going to take longer. But what are some of the other things that you see rear their ugly head in the industry because of these labor shortages?
Well, it is unpredictability as well, right? If you can't manage, well, it's all about the schedule, right? Eventually it has an impact on the schedule because you all of a sudden you don't have the labor that you thought you will have, and then that kind of affects your productivity, and then you fall behind and all that stuff. So just a lack of planning, the higher risk you go into, that would also eventually reflect into costs, right? And then you to cover you put in higher contingency if you are able, if it's not competitive bidding, and you eventually the market, even with a competitive market, eventually the market will inflate because just the labor are not there, and everybody going after the smaller pool, supply and demand, eventually the labor wages will go up. But we haven't seen that major inflation in labor. There are definitely, but not like drastic, but it does not mean that problem will not exacerbate, and we might seeing higher prices in the future. So that's on the economic part. On the quality and the health and safety part, that's another major, right? That's another problem. With the lack of skilled labor and with the lack of labor that don't have the right experience, now you are running into more health and safety problems, accidents on sites, probably increases at quality, right? You finish a project and you're left with a bag of a lot of construction defects that you have to deal with. We're getting inundated with because we do a lot of expert witness work with a lot of construction defect cases, right? I handed over the project, but all of those items that are still either incomplete or the quality of work is so bad, now I have to deal with them, like the end user.
Yeah, I imagine in your industry, you guys are riding shotgun. You're right on the front row seeing a lot of the carnage of these results, right?
Right, right, and that is not due to bad faith or just contractor wanted to make more money, and it just again, it's the the skilled labor that we used to have and we're all used to. I mean, those people that we trust and we've been working with for a long time, that generation is either about to retire or retiring, and there is a gap to fill, and that gap until they get seasoned and have the experience, and you're gonna face all those problems.
Yeah, and this younger generation, a lot of times when we have these conversations, at least on the podcast, and a lot of my associates and friends in the industry are saying, well, the other problem is that this knowledge and the experience, that wisdom, the actual application of not just the how and what, but the why we do things the way we do is retiring, is leaving, and they're turning it over to unskilled labor. They might be sharp and smart and technical because they've grown up in a world with computers and mobile devices in their hands. But what challenges are you seeing with that transfer of knowledge from this older generation to the new guys?
Yeah, I mean that you just described the problem, right? I mean, the issue that we're seeing is that all that wealth of experience that came with the older generation, that was not really recorded and sustained in a way that it's easily transferred to the younger generation. So it stays with these people, and I'm just stereotyping, right? I mean, there are companies are better than others with succession plans and making sure that they maintain their experience in-house, but in most cases, I mean, the experience stays with that person, and it was never transferred down either through succession plan or through some sort of methods or means to record this experience so that somebody else coming into the field, they can go over it, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They just have to, it's there, it's a learning guide, and then they just have to do catch up. So yeah, that is the major problem, and it's not a company specific. It's an industry wide. We were lucky a few years ago to get to the infrastructure bill. Like, and I'm biased because I'm in that field, but I think our infrastructure in really in a bad shape and needs to be fixed. And we lucky to get that bill, and I don't think it's enough. But even with the amount of bill available, there are a lot of argument out there that we're never going to be able to spend it because we just don't have the resources to do so. And it's a challenge in the industry that, I mean, our leaders have to brainstorm around it and see how they want to fix it.
So let me ask you this, are you seeing companies that are doing a good job of this? I mean, what are some of the tactics or strategies they're using to have a better transfer of knowledge before these folks retire and before we think that we're done training the new guys that really don't have enough of a grasp on what they're supposed to be building?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen I've seen some companies where they have a little bit better. It's a multiple factors, right? I mean, it's not one thing. It's not like you write a procedure and a guide or a manual, and somebody comes and read the manuals and they know everything. It's a multiple factors. I mean, we've seen companies where they have a good apprenticeship and mentorship programs, so they just as senior people really being good chaperones and transferring that experience, that knowledge and experience. We've seen people who are having relationship with colleges or high schools and encouraging younger to go into trades and providing training workshops. You've seen organizations right these days, like nonprofit organizations such as I'm gonna give you an example, the Arizona Builder Alliance here, we call them the ABA. They have training workshops as well, and a lot of contractors sending their junior staff to it, and so on. So there are steps in the right directions. Now, the thing that I think is still lacking is it's that investment to embrace technology a little bit better, to help through the process. Technology can be a facilitator in that transition period, and in order to get there, you have to have good data, and in order to have good data, you have to have procedures in place to collect that data and know your productivity rates and so on. I don't think the industry is catching up as it should be with the technology that's out there and available, in my opinion. And there are different reasons for it. One of it is it's costly, right? I mean, it's an initial investment that is going to pay off in the future. Everybody's waiting for that person to do that initial investment so they can tag along, or but yeah, I mean, we haven't seen. There are a lot of companies out there similar to yours where they're venturing and investing into tools to facilitate and improve the labor productivity rates and efficiencies. We just wanna people on the other end to kind of embrace that and like invest in that more, right? I mean, of course, there are companies that are doing that, but I would like to see a little bit more marriage there between the industry and the innovation part.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's interesting. You mentioned the AGC, the Association of General Contractors, and we are big supporters of that, been involved with that for many years. And here in Utah, a couple of years ago, they built a brand new training facility. And I think it was close to 50% of the labor and materials were donated by the contractors in our state to invest in that training facility for the future. So that it was really inspiring. We were there at the ribbon cutting with the governor and with the local and area presidents of the AGC chapters, and just an awesome event. I mean, we support their golf tournaments and different things, but they are doing a good job of doing those types of things like you mentioned. But I do think there's a lot of boots on the ground contractors with their heads down, busy on projects that maybe aren't as involved in that as they should be. I mean, that survey you cited, I've seen that. That's great data. But I'm thinking, there's well over 1 million contractors in the United States. Why don't we have 10,000? Why don't we have 50,000 surveyed in that? And I just think everybody's so busy that they need to plug in a little bit more so that
and help. And like I said, it's an industry-wide problem, and organization like the AGC is one of the greatest organizations that lobby and speaks on behalf of contractors and trade, the trade industry. They do a lot of outreach, right? I mean, it's just similar to the section in Utah that you just talked about, and across the whole nation, where they're providing training and even education, right? Just the PR element is important as well, right? I remember when, even before getting into when I started as an engineer, I was a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And as a young engineer, I always wondered, like, why generally American people idolize, like, rock stars and, like, lawyers and so on, while, like, the people that are building their bridges and, like, making sure the water is coming to their homes and, like, and all that stuff, I mean, nobody hears about them. And part of the answer is PR, right? I mean, maybe we need to get together with Hollywood or Netflix and have, like, series where, like, one star is a trade guy, and, like, and so just people say, make it exciting, make it sexy, like.
Yeah. Well, Mike Rowe with 30 jobs, and Mike Rowe's a great advocate for the industry. We got another guest we've had a couple times on the podcast, Letitia Henke out of California, also your state. She does trainings for programs for high school students with the trades, especially roofing. And Letitia Henke won an award from Mike Rowe, and they put her on a show that they aired, winning that, and the good work that she's doing at helping in this exact problem that we're talking about. I just think we just need more people doing those types of things.
and it's very important, and even before high school, right? I mean, uh, another example of ASCE, they have an elementary school program, so where they
Oh,
go
wow.
and teach kids how to put puzzles together and block together and stuff like that. So it's I think you want to start at the early level possible, just telling these kids that, hey, there is a very good profession out there that you can get advantage of and you can get into. So yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, these efforts.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even, not to linger too long on this part of the conversation, but it's been 2 or 3 years ago, I flew out to Louisville, Kentucky. I was invited by one of our large customers that was in concrete to come and present at their local AGC chapter meeting. And I did about a 45-minute presentation on how we help construction companies. And we had 3 customers there. There were like 42 people there, represented 18 companies. Again, the one invited us, so you could count them or not, but basically less than 15% of the room had any type of technology like ours in place to collect field data and to automate payroll and labor and trending and productivity, the things that you had mentioned. And I think the adoption rates are up from that, but it's still well under half the industry. I mean, I would say maybe we're getting close to 30% that's adopted some type of technology that helps companies have a better handle on these things. But it's just pretty crazy to me that, we've been doing this 20 years and it was really hard initially, but now I don't think there's any excuse why companies aren't doing a better job at adopting these types of tools that are right.
True, and that is one of the solutions as well, right? I mean, we talk about education, we talk about PR, we talk about changing people's perspective to the profession, but also let's be real, right? I mean, we're moving into an era where technology is part of our life. New generations are raised in that era, so technology should be part of the industry as well. I mean, I think the construction industry is behind other industries on that, right? I mean, you got the industrial are better with technology and integrating into their production. The defense industry is better in technology. So I think the construction industry eventually needs to catch up. And I think and I have asked a lot of people as to why is that? Why is the construction industry so behind? Part of it, like I said, since it's working, why fixing it right now, right? I mean, part of it is because they rely heavily on the experience of their people, and then things are getting built. So why doing something different, right? But now we're facing that challenge, right? So now we have to do something different. And the other part is the cost. Initially, the cost of investment into technology, but that is getting cheaper, right? I mean, that is getting. I mean, the technology a company like yours are probably spending a lot of money into that field, making it easier for other end users to use these tools at a cheaper cost than what you used to in the past. So I'm hopeful that things gonna improve in the future because there is a need for it and more people getting into that field.
Yeah, all great points, and we've had a lot of guests on the podcast also talk about another piece to this that I think is impactful, and that is the culture, the company, the family environment, the embracing people as individuals. They're not just someone swinging a hammer, but they're a human, they're a person with a family or with goals and dreams, and one day they need to retire. So what are you seeing companies do that are doing a good job in this area of retaining that talent once they have it by putting programs like this in place to take better care of their employees?
Yeah, I mean, the companies that do pay attention to their staff have again training course in place so that staff have kind of like a succession plan and a way to improve themselves. And also you need to keep the culture in the company, right? I mean, like throw social events together, like, so that people don't feel isolated on the project sites like ever, like, and they're disconnected from headquarters, like, companies that from time to time throw those like mixers or social events where everybody gets together makes a huge difference, because the like staff feel connected, and that they belong somewhere.
Yeah, I remember, we used to get like free lunch Friday, or, the boss buys lunch, or there different things like that were always helpful. And when I was a laborer way back in the day, when I had more hair, that was a big deal to me, company swag, and, a nice jacket with the logo on it that you're proud to wear. I mean, those things can be helpful, but I think we're in a different time now where, free lunch or a self-serving jacket with my company logo on it isn't quite, gonna get it across the finish line with somebody if they're looking at making, $5 more an hour, working down the street. So I think these things are good to talk about as well, aside from just training and all the other things where we've already got a thin pool to choose from. What can we do to keep the pool we have before we try and go out there and just replace them?
Yeah. And some companies do a much better job than others. But even with that, Mike, I don't think it's sufficient to fill in the gap. I mean, there's a lot of work out there. And let's talk about only those companies that are doing good job of meeting the core group, like the core team. But you still need more labor to finish the job, even in addition to your core team. So what do you do? And how do you do it? And I think the solution is technology, and different innovative way of looking at contracting labor. But in order to get there, the problem with, again, another problem with technology and integrating that into the construction side is data. The industry does not yet, and some companies do have their own data and clean data, but the industry-wide don't have clean data, meaningful data, that is out there for tools and technology to take those data and analyze and make something productive out of it, right? So that is a big challenge in the industry. Okay, how do you collect data, and who wants to invest in collecting data and making it clean so that data can be used to improve on productivity and efficiency and so on?
Yeah, one of the other big statistic that gets thrown around, and I actually heard this, there was a little bit of movement and not in the right direction, but it's always been in the adoption of technology. It was agriculture and then and construction were the two, and construction used to be ahead of agriculture in technology adoption. And I have heard recently construction has now dropped below agriculture, where they have gotten, and that's, you want to talk about manual labor, picking cherries or onions or potatoes. I mean, it doesn't get more manual than that. And yet they are adopting technology at a better rate than construction.
I mean, bear in mind, like architectural, I'm not I don't know much about architecture, but construction versus like industrial, right? The problem is with construction that it's a labor heavy industry, right? I mean, we're still, the general sum, we say the cost of an item is 60-40 or 70-30, like labor-wise, 60% labor or 70% labor of the item that we're trying to build. So it's a very heavy human. There's a very human element, big human element to it, which makes it more difficult to control, right?
Yeah, less predictable.
But again, I mean, I think with clean data and with the AI out there and with tools and technologies, it can be improved. It definitely can be improved.
Well, I used to always say, and it's I don't know that it's funny, but it's interesting. Your software doesn't get sick. It doesn't. I mean, it gets a virus, so to speak, a little different, but software doesn't take a day off. It doesn't get sick. Doesn't need benefits. It doesn't get hurt and injured. If you can invest in that and it can make your team that does have those human elements involved, make them better and more efficient with the time that they are there and healthy and able to be productive. Because like you said, it's all about the schedule. Well, the schedule is all about production. And
yeah, and it's a better planning tool as well. I give you an example. I was reading a paper and listening to a presentation, one of the AACE's presentation. So there is this big project on an island that is environmental very sensitive. So they cannot have people coming in and out of the island. So the construction the labor has to stay in the islands to finish the project. It's a huge project, which that means they have a labor camp, and limited beds, right, per labor. So each trade have a slot when they can mobilize their people and demobilize their people. So how do you plan that effectively, right? So if you take a schedule with 2,000 activities and each activity has an early start and a finished start, the amount of combination that you have out there as to how you move people in and out because of the variance and the activity before it affects the projects, is when you calculate that, it's in the billion of combination. So only software gonna be able to calculate all that probability for you, so you can optimize your planning tools and then more efficiently manage the risk there, right? And this is like an odd example, but I'm just trying to illustrate that when you have good technology and good data as well, it's never going to eliminate the human element, because again, construction is labor heavy, but it would definitely improve the efficiency. So instead of needing 100 man hours on something, you would need 90 man hours on something, and that adds up and makes a difference industry wise.
Yeah, it's all fair points, all great things. So tell me this as we wind down another awesome discussion. What do you think is the main thing or the main takeaway that you would want a company to have from our conversation today moving forward?
Well, we talked about it in our previous episode, but let me start with the corporate HR saying. We just talk about it. I mean, it's just make your staff belongs to something, right? So that you can retain the core group that you have, and spend more money on project control, right? I mean, try to collect data, try to know what the productivity rate of your staff is, and try to put a little bit more effort in collecting daily reports and making sure those are integrated into your planning and your project control procedures. Put procedures together, make things more procedural for your staff, so that you can circumstance some of the experience that way, right? So it's more of like guides for them to go through. So those are some of the things that I would think would be very helpful.
Yeah, well, we sure appreciate you sharing more wisdom and insight. You have a unique perspective. You're helping clean up messes once they've already happened, and then trying to help companies avoid them in the future, which I think that's what we're all trying to do in construction. How do we get better today so that, we can win again tomorrow, right?
True.
Love it. Well, thanks again, Sam. It's been a pleasure to have you back, and we'll have to catch up again down the road and maybe talk about another topic, because I know there's a lot more wisdom in that brain of yours that our listeners need. So thanks again for sharing.
Thanks, Mike, for having me, and it was a pleasure being on here. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.